Misquamicut Beach Nourishment Proposal. Caswell Cook Jr., Executive Director, Misquamicut Business Association. Take it away, Caswell.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for letting me come before the council. I want to just sort of preface my remarks as saying that I am not a scientist. I am not a climate change expert. I am not a coastal geologist, and I'm not even a politician anymore, which is good. But I am a person who for 30 years has had a business in Misquamicut, and for 24 years I've run the Misquamicut Business Association. I don't currently live in Misquamicut, but I have lived in Misquamicut in terms of the fire district. And obviously you guys have seen the damage, the whole town has seen the damage that has incurred this winter especially as a result of just regular storms. Used to be that we say, oh, we had the big one in 38 and 54 and Hurricane Bob, and you could kind of say, well, every generation you get one of those storms that's destructive. But as you've seen, and as you've all spent tons of money as the town this year, shoveling the streets after a rainstorm, it's at the point where it's kind of at a breaking point. And I know that there's never much of an appetite to spend money at the beach. I get it. A lot of the folks there are second homeowners, and Westerly has a love-hate relationship with second homeowners. It's just the way it's always been. And I think there's probably a way that I could explain or present something to you in a way that might appeal to you and to the general public in the town of Westerly. So that's kind of my attempt tonight. This is just a proposal. It doesn't come from the Misquamicut Business Association. It kind of comes from me, and I kind of want it to get some inertia on its own. So if the residents agree and the fire district agrees, so I'm taking this presentation on the road. I started at the Chamber of Commerce, going to the fire district in a week or so. But having served in your seat there for 8 terms for 16 years, I know that without the town's buy-in, this would go nowhere. So my proposal is for Misquamicut Beach Nourishment, and I'm going to explain a little bit about what Nourishment is. But first, I want to sort of go over what the problem is, what the history is, who does this affect. I have a video so that all of this just doesn't come from me. I've got a video with some experts that actually have done projects in other places around the country. And then I do have a call for action, which I will basically place in your hands. We all know what the problems are at the beach: sea level rise, climate change. Part of Misquamicut is on a barrier beach, and barrier beaches want to migrate. They want to move. If we knew in 1890, when Atlantic Beach Park was built, what we know today, none of that stuff would have gotten built. And it would look like the dunes on the Cape. And that's probably the way it should have been. But we didn't know that then, and people just kept building and building, and we have what we have today. And so now we have to deal with the problem. And now we have this whole situation with frequent storms, and some of them aren't even storms. Some of them are just high tides with a little bit of wind that are just causing havoc along our entire shore of our town. So we lose shoreline each year. I mean, you guys have all heard presentations from geologists. We lose a foot of shoreline a year on good years. We lose a 3 feet of shoreline per year on a bad year. And that's been going on since URI started studying this back in the 1950s. And you've seen probably maps of how shorelines have eroded over the years. And I explained before, barrier beaches want to move. Hurricanes and superstorms, they ravage the beach and the infrastructure. But now a regular nor'easter or just a wind and rain event causes hurricane-like damage and flooding. And that's why we're at kind of a critical breaking point. This is a great picture. So if you look at the corner of that building, that's the patio of the Windjammer. And look how high the sand was and how far out the beach went. Now keep your eye on the corner of that sort of cement structure with the white top. That's that cement structure right there. That's where it's at right now. It's literally at the ocean at this point. So all those years ago when we were people were studying what we could do, how we could do things, I went through some old files of the NBA from the 80s when Mario Celico was the president, and he had Barrier Reef project proposed. But of course, back then you had all that beach and you had time, and now there's just no more time. It's here, and it's destroying things that are along the shore. So what have we done to mitigate currently. We did a dredge project, one of the councils that I was on, and it placed some of the sand from the Winnapaug Pond onto the state beach. But unfortunately, it proves ineffective because you have a 3-mile stretch of beach and it's, you know, all of a sudden it juts out 150 feet into the ocean. Well, what's going to happen? It's going to just get pushed away, which it did. I mean, some of it's still there, but it just got sort of shoved down the beach and then, you know, sits 100 feet off the shore. You can't just do like little measures and say, we're only going to do something in front of the town beach or only going to do something in front of the Andrea, because you have to take the whole thing into consideration. We raised a lot of structures after Superstorm Sandy, and every structure that could get raised, including the town beach, was raised. But if there's no more road to get down there, it doesn't matter if you raise your structures. If the water is underneath them, you're kind of up the creek. No proposals from anybody takes into account the whole stretch of beach. It's all kind of separate and piecemeal. The state does their portion. The fire district does their portion. The town fixes the town beach. And the residents try to band together and put some Band-Aids on their sections. And nothing takes this whole stretch into account. There's been a ton of studies done. Building coastal resiliency at Misquamicut Beach, this Pawcatuck River integrated feasibility report. I mean, all these studies have been done and come to different conclusions. But again, they're just studies and nobody has done any of the action part of those things. So we've got tons of years of studies of what's gone on at the beach. And now it's time to maybe take some of that information and have action. This is a quick video. So now this video here, I think it was actually either the police chief or it was the town manager that took this video. This is at the far end of Atlantic Avenue. This was just one of those winter storms. And I'm going to play the video and you'll see how the water, this is Atlantic Avenue right here, but you'll see how the water rushes down to all of the side streets. So this is just a regular storm and that road is impassable and the water is just rushing down into the neighborhoods. I mean, that's uncontrollable, and that's just from a high tide event, and that's pretty crazy. So it's real stuff. And then this is what you guys deal with all winter. I don't know how much money the town spent. Was it 100 grand? Was it more? You know, putting public works in Misquamicut for 3 months to clean up the streets. I mean, if that street was, you know, anywhere else in town, you know, people, maybe you don't notice it in the winter because there's not as many people that live on that street, but this is major damage to the town's infrastructure. And that's what it looks like after every single storm. So who does this affect? Who, you know, there's always been this thing where Westerly is kind of divided into these different segments. The people out in Bradford, those people down in Watch Hill, the people in Misquamicut, you know, at the end of the day, this is all Westerly and we all are part of this town. So who does this affect? Well, it affects the residents. It affects the businesses. It affects public access. It affects Westerly taxpayers. It affects local and state economy. It affects town and state property, and it affects the fire district. So what would Westerly lose if you and the state and the feds did nothing? That's probably the real, you know, question. $9 million a year in property taxes. So think about the budget you guys just did. I don't even know what the budget is now. Is it 100 million yet? 100 million. Think about if you had to plug a $9 million hole because that strip was gone. That's huge. That's a huge portion of your budget. You'd lose 1,000 seasonal jobs. Where would the kids work in the summer that go to the high school? Everybody works down the beach in the summer, right? I mean, some of your kids work for me, Joy, you know. And so you're going to lose 1,000 seasonal jobs. You're going to lose 50 businesses, 50. I drove up and down Atlantic Avenue, and I don't know that anyone's aware, but there are 215 houses on that street. I'm going to say that number again, 215 houses on Atlantic Avenue. That's not including the side streets. You have a town beach pavilion there. You have property that you're now spending millions of dollars to purchase at the beach, which is a good thing. There's a state beach pavilion, which has 3,000 parking spaces. Where in the town of Westerly do you have 3,000 parking spaces? Nowhere. You have 2 trailer parks. You would lose millions of dollars in hotel and meals tax and the state beach parking revenue. Think about it. Misquamicut State Beach is the largest revenue generating state beach in the state of Rhode Island. The state loses, the town, you'll lose a few $100,000 per year if that state beach lot is washed out and nothing is done. It's a huge economic benefit to the town to have the beach. So I wanted to kind of give you a little map and show you the areas I'm talking about. I mean, when you look at that, all those areas that are shaded in yellow are what is at risk if we lose that little strip of beach right there. All of those homes. So in addition to the 218 homes along Atlantic Avenue, there's a couple hundred more houses that are all going to be washed away like they were, you know, they were all flooded during Superstorm Sandy. And then the other end of the beach, same thing. You got all of Breach Drive. You can't get past Weekapaug Road when there's a storm. And all of those houses on Atlantic Avenue, on both sides of Atlantic Avenue, they're all in jeopardy, all of them. And let's take it a little bit bigger. This is the town of Westerly. You can see the airport in the middle. We're not talking about like a few people or a few little businesses. We're talking about an entire segment, a 3-mile stretch of your town that is in jeopardy of falling into the ocean. And so it's a huge problem that affects residents, businesses, and more. So, does anyone really care if the beach goes away? Well, that's a Saturday at the beach. Now, there's probably 10,000 people on that beach on a Saturday, and each one of them, there's some kind of formula that probably the Chamber of Commerce could tell you how much each person spends when they come to town. Whether it's 20 bucks, 50 bucks, 100 bucks, it's probably at least 100 with what you have to pay for lunch and stuff like that. We lose that, and Westerly becomes Hopkinton in terms of property taxes. If we don't have all this additional income, these additional jobs, this additional business, as a town, we're screwed. And Misquamicut's the only place you got true public access to the beach. You don't in Weekapaug. You're fighting over one street and 12 parking spaces. You don't necessarily have as much in Watch Hill. I mean, there's parking and stuff, but it's just, you know, it's not the same. To get out to Napatry Point is a pain, because where do you park? You don't have that problem in Misquamicut. Now picture Misquamicut Beach, all the structures being gone from the Weekapaug Bridge down to Patty's, and it becomes this open stretch of plain beach. Some people say, aha, that's what we want. But then where would you park to access it? You could look at it, but all those houses up and down the side roads, there's no parking lots. So how would people access this stretch of beach that has nothing on it? Theoretically, they wouldn't, because you don't go walking out on those big spits out on Cape Cod. You just look at it from the shore and say, well, that's kind of cute out there, you know, that barrier beach. But you gotta hike it to get there, and there's never anybody on it, because who's got the time to go out there and do that? It's like Napatry Point. You really have to work hard to get out there. The thing about Misquamicut is that's easy access for people to go to the beach. And I know people scream and yell, it's $30 to get a state beach pass. Come on, man, that's cheap. You can't get anywhere for $30 in this day and age. And so to have access, it's a huge thing. So what are the solutions? I don't have all the solutions, but I think I have what could be the best solution for the town. And I'm gonna give you a quick overview. I'm gonna have someone else explain it with a video in a second. And then I'll tell you what it'll cost, because that's what everyone wants to know. So NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, has done 400 projects across America that have placed 1.5 billion cubic yards of sand along the continental US coastline. And you can go to the database, it's in my PowerPoint, it's Beach Nourishment, it's at the end of the NOAA website. It's got the projects, the newest projects, the oldest projects, the known length, the total cost, the total volume, it's all there. And projects are being done in Long Island, the Outer Banks, Virginia, Florida, Alabama, all over the place. I've seen it done in Galveston, Texas, and I've watched these projects. So this is a video, and now the man behind the curtain is going to have to actually play the video so you can hear the audio. But before we play the video, there's 3 things on this video. One of them is a city planner from Virginia Beach. So the actual city has decided to do beach nourishment, and it shows how their project is done. Number 2 is another project that I forget where it is, but it shows what offshore dredging does. And the third is what was just done on Montauk, which I'll speak about on Long Island, which is only 40 miles away. So if we can roll the video and have the audio.
The topic of the day, feeding the beaches. Every few years, the city and/or the Army Corps of Engineers replenishes the sands along our shorelines. The replenishment work will widen the shoreline to 300 feet and raise the beach to 9 feet above sea level. When it is complete, the resort beach will have 1.4 million cubic yards of sand added to it. The primary function of a wide beach is to protect oceanfront infrastructure from a hurricane. The more space we can create between the ocean and the buildings and roadways, the more likely we are to withstand storm flooding. Crews are working in 1,000-foot sections from 15th Street headed north to 70th Street. Each section takes about 2 to 3 days to complete, with work taking place 24/7. The work is temporary and will ensure our beach is around for years to come and our infrastructure is protected.
This is Montauk, and this was just, you can keep running the video, I'll talk over it. So when I look at this video, this was just done in January. Long Island is going to be doing 83 miles of shoreline, but they started in Montauk.
Excuse me, Caswell. Point of order. The time ran out. I think we need to take a vote to extend your time.
We can't. How much more time? You think?
5 more minutes?
5 minutes? If there's no objection, we'll go another 5 minutes.
Okay. Thanks. So if you want to keep playing the video. So this to me looks just like Atlantic Avenue. I mean, think about it. That looks like Atlantic Ave. That looks like Winnapeaug Pond. And the light colored sand is how much sand we currently have now. And all that extra sand is what they put on the beach. And this is a project that literally is taking place 40 miles off our coast. So it's not like a beach replenishment project is something that's strange, or it's not proven, or it's crazy. I mean, this is what they're doing, and this is the kind of thing that's needed if we want to keep Misquamicut Beach intact, because as the lady said, you've got to put more distance between.
In Ocean View, the beach renourishment project continues to fill the sand here in the Willoughby Spit area. Today we got an inside look into how the sand gets from the bay and onto the shoreline, as well as how well this replenishment project has held up against the recent round of storms. We sailed out to the middle of the Chesapeake Bay, and right by the HRBT, we found the Great Lakes Dredging Company's dredge ship, Liberty Island, waiting to start the workday. At the helm, Captain James Hoffman.
You'll see the guys pick it up with a grappling hook.
Earlier in the day, the Liberty Island combed the bay floor, and it used 2 gigantic pumps like this one to vacuum up sand.
This goes down into the sea bottom and probably goes into the seabed about that, and it's like a cheese grater. It just picks it right up. You can see the dry sand in the hopper right here. A lot of times it'll load all the way from the back of the hopper forward.
Hoffman says roughly 480 dump truck loads of sand sit in the bottom of the ship, and then the Liberty Island sails over to hook up to this pipeline. The pipeline stretches 2 miles to the shoreline. The ship's pump engines spring to life with a deafening roar, and the sand slowly drops through the pipeline.
And it shoves it down into the pipe, goes through the pumps that you just saw, and sends it ashore.
You see the end product, tons of sand spread out by bulldozers and front-end loaders. Project manager Robert Pretlow says at 80% complete, the new beach has held up well against recent storms.
From what they're finding so far, it has been no major impact on what was placed.
With close to 3 football stadiums worth of sand dumped, it's easy to see it's a massive project. In the era of erosion, scenes like this may repeat across not only Norfolk, but all of Hampton Road's shorelines. As this project gets closer to finishing, a fair amount of this Great Lakes Dredging Company equipment will be heading south to the Outer Banks, where they will be taking care of the 4-town beach renourishment project in Duck, Southern Shores, Kitty Hawk, as well as Kill Devil Hills. In Norfolk, I'm Matt Gregory. Town on your side.
All right, so now I got to take control of this thing back here. Let's see, share screen. I guess I go back to that. Yep, and then I think I can. Might need some technical help here. Oh, I got it. All right, let me just go to where I was so that we can.
The topic of the day.
All right, cool. All right, let me finish up. I know you've got other things on the agenda, but So these projects are designed to manage the risk of coastal storm damage in a way that balances risk to human life and property while maintaining, enhancing, and restoring the ecosystem integrity and coastal biodiversity. And this is kind of how it works. It's this vacuum-like structure, sucks the sand up, pumps it into the shore. You saw it explained in the video. I'll skip over this one. Why beach nourishment? Beach erosion is expected to become increasingly more detrimental in the coming years. You know it, I know it, we all know it. While the construction of hard structures like seawalls and reefs might last longer, soft engineering projects like beach nourishment and dune restoration are generally more sustainable and less intrusive, and it needs to be repeated every 7 to 10 years. So, what are the benefits in terms of public access? That has been a huge topic, right? How many times have people been coming to the council screaming about public access? And why, especially down in that area? Because we're losing the shoreline. The people's homes are right up against it. There's no more beach left. And so that 10 feet above the seaweed is sometimes in these people's back decks. And there's arguments and there's people screaming and yelling at each other and there's lawsuits. Well, what do you do to solve the problem? Give them more of what everybody wants. Sand. You add 150 feet of sand, the homeowners are going to have to realize that that's public property because it's paid for by public funding. And I don't think, and I'm not going to speak for the homeowners on Atlantic Avenue, but I think faced with losing their homes into the ocean for doing nothing or getting 150 feet of sand to protect their structures, I think maybe they won't, scream and yell about who's walking across the beach anymore because it's going to be public. That part of it, that 150 feet or whatever it is that the town adds. So you give them more of what they want. What the people want is to be able to go on the beach and actually have a place to walk. You can't walk from one end of Misquamicut to the other these days because you walk in front of the Windjam or the Pleasant View, there's nothing there. So, bury everybody in sand, it'll work. So this is the area I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a rinky-dink portion. I'm talking about 3 miles from the Weekapaug Bridge all the way past the last building on Atlantic Avenue. And hey, if Watch Hill wants to hook up and join the project, we could figure out how to continue it as well down the way. So here's the cost. This is to put it in perspective. You like my little graphic there. It's $8 to $10 million per mile. So we have 3 miles to do. 24 to 30 million for the project each decade. The Army Corps pays 2/3 if they approve the project, which leaves a balance of $8 to $10 million per decade. The state owns half a mile of the 3 miles, so they would be on the hook for $4 to $5 million. The town would need to raise $3 to $5 million per decade for this project, which is $300,000 to $500,000 per year that you would have to set aside. You could take it from the meal tax. You could ask the fire district to, contribute and add a tax, or there's a ton of ways to do it. You could take the state beach money, which is like $250,000 a year that you get, and just put that in a bank account. And put some of the hotel tax in there. But regardless, I'm not going to say that $300,000 to $500,000 isn't a lot, but I mean, when the field was short 500,000, it's like, hey, yeah, right, we'll take care of that. And when you have a surplus in the millions, to protect $9 million a year in property taxes, it seems a wise investment to put aside $300,000 to $500,000 a year to protect hundreds of your constituents' houses and businesses. So this is what Misquamicut could look like if we were able to do this project. So I'll wrap it up. Perspective in spending, $100 million annual town budget, $50 million we just are spending for the elementary schools, $13 million was the police station. We spent $3.5 million to fix School Street. $3.5 million to fix one street in the town of Westerly. And I'm coming to you saying we need $3 million every 10 years to fix a 3-mile stretch with 218 homes and 50 businesses and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in revenue and $9 million in property taxes. So, and we spent $3.5 million for the public works facility a few years back. So when put into perspective of the town's budget and town spending, it's pennies on the dollar to just put money aside so that we have a match. Because if we don't have, $3 million towards the $30 million project, it doesn't get off the ground. So no action means $9 million in property taxes from Misquamicut's lost, and everyone in every other part of town, your taxes will go up if there's no more beach money. You're going to forsake $90 million a year per decade in property taxes. or spend $3 to $5 million per decade to save $90 million in income, or spend hundreds of millions of dollars to remove all the structures. So let's think about that. You can't just let that fall into the ocean. Those places have to be bought out, eminent domain, fair market value. You got to take up the street. You got the water going down the street. You got the electric. Imagine removing 3 miles of infrastructure at that beach and the cost involved in that. So you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to buy out 218 houses and 50 businesses, or spend $3 to $5 million per decade and prolong the life of your beach. And yeah, it's got to be done every decade because Mother Nature keeps eroding beaches. So in conclusion, inaction is going to cost more than taking action. The long-term benefits include greater public access, protection of your assets, the town's assets that you just purchased this winter, your infrastructure, town and state property, homes, and jobs. The problem is the clock is ticking. There's just not a lot of time left. And what this is going to take is, this isn't Caswell's proposal, this isn't the MBA's proposal, this needs to be the town of Westerly's problem. And you guys need to take the leadership, and it can't get sent to another study committee. We need action, because some of my business owners down there and some of the homeowners have said, we don't have 5 years left. And that's the truth. We are at that tipping point where there's no more time. So I know in Quentin Jaws, if you ever like the movie Jaws, he said you either need to pay up or be on welfare all winter. But it's true. You either got to put something down, or we're going to be out of business. And let me tell you, if Misquamicut Beach disappears and it becomes just a sand spit, Westerly loses its character. And I can't explain it any other way. So that's my presentation. I need to know that this town council at least would make a decision saying, yeah, we can go forward with doing something like this, or we would rather just see everybody kind of leave, and we can try to get some federal money to buy out some places and have a dignified exit from that strip. But some kind of an answer, yes or no is needed. The state rep and the senator got to be on board. The governor's office, DEM, CRMC, the fire district, the MBA, the homeowners, everyone's got to be on board, or nothing's going to happen. So that's my presentation. I leave it to you. I can answer questions if you have any, but I'm hoping you'll take some action.
Thank you, Caswell, for the presentation, and it was enlightening. I appreciate that. Did you price out a potential seawall out there?
No, because nobody wants CRMC and all the agencies that you go to, and it's been tried. It was tried 30 years ago. They don't want those kind of structures. They don't want seawalls. They don't want you to put rocks around things anymore. They just, as much as I think it could help, although it was brought up that I was going to propose a seawall, and I think they started going off on one of those social media sites that Caswell wants to kill the waves or something. I'm like, oh, whatever. But it's something that could be looked at. But the problem is time, and the most tried way of doing this is these 400 projects that have been done with beach nourishment, and it's the most ecologically sound way to do it. But again, I'm not an expert.
Right. Because I just see the seawalls, outside of Stonington and up at Point Judith, and they just work really nice, and it's kind of almost like a permanent solution. I'm sure they're not going to be there forever, but you might get 50 or 100 years out of them. So I was just curious, as that is a potential option.
I'm sure everything's an option.
Thank you.
I have a couple quick questions, please. First, thank you for your presentation. It was very informative and very well done. The first question I want to ask is CRMC and the fact that they've given you a cease and desist right now. Is it still in effect that you can't put the sand back? And how are we going to work with that situation? Yeah,
I'm not a fan of CRMC's methods sometimes. But but their job is to protect our coastline. I went to that meeting that Victoria Gu had last week, and what I saw at the table was, there's a guy that works for the president from FEMA, and there was REMA, and there was all these people, and they're like, we've got all this money to hand out, and we got SBA loans, and I'm going, and they're like, we're here to help survivors. And I'm like, man, you guys are like square peg, round hole. There's no survivors from a winter storm in Misquamicut Beach, and everyone's a second homeowner, so there's no money coming. And you can ask the town manager, but I don't think there's any money coming from all that, the president's declared disaster and all this stuff. And I think the governor thinks we're getting money, but we aren't, because what the disaster that they declared won't help us. So I said to them, I'm like, if you have a line to the president, instead of spending millions of dollars on whatever it is you're doing and having like 50 staff to send on Rhode Island, just give us 25 million bucks. We'll take care of it, And then Matuna could do the same thing. But the bottom line is CRMC, to kind of get back to what you were saying, they don't have a problem, and the director of CRMC was sitting there, they don't have a problem with beach nourishment. The guy was fine with it. He said it's just about the money. And so there's no opposition to it. As far as cease and desist, yeah, I mean, I think it's ridiculous. I think that what happened after Superstorm Sandy was the state and the agencies got together and they issued permits to people along Misquamicut Beach, and people were able to get the sand put back on the beach. They're not doing it like that. And they're saying to us in public meetings, oh, this is a quick process. Well, I saw an email for one of the people who got a cease and desist. He put in his application in early April, and he just got an email back saying, oh, it's going to take another 8 to 10 weeks. I mean, ridiculous. I mean, this is for like someone who has a hotel on the beach. So he can't put that sand back on the beach. He has to wait until what, July to put it? It doesn't make any sense. So a lot of these agencies, while they certainly mean well, and I'm not here to trash anyone, I would say that all those people on all those panels, none of them have a house in Misquamicut. None of them have a business in Misquamicut. None of them live there, and it's not a top priority. So like I said, I am not an agent. I'm not here on behalf of anything except I don't want to see the beach I've worked at for 30 years disappear.
Did FEMA say that they would actually look, try to give money? Like there was an application that had to be filled out so you could get some money for the beach?
No, everybody just looks in other directions when I ask for money. No, nobody will cough anything up. What has to happen is the town of Westerly would need to say, hey, Army Corps, is this a feasible project? And they looked at it once before, and they came up with this thing called the Pawcatuck River Study, which makes no sense because I thought it was a study of the Pawcatuck River, but it wasn't. It was a study of the coastline from Watch Hill to Galilee, but they named it Pawcatuck River Study. And they said that there wasn't enough, it wasn't cost effective to do a project similar to this. Now, this was also several years ago before like Montauk Point got done. And they also only took into account the actual price of the structures if they were to be replaced on the beach side only of Atlantic Avenue, which makes no sense because it's not just the structures, it's the jobs, it's the taxes, it's the economy, it's our way of life. So I would say the first order of business is to go back to Army Corps and say, let's take another look at this. Because if they agreed to pay 2/3 and the state would come up with another portion and the town only has to come up with the 3 million, I think it's an easier sell.
And my last question regarding dredging, would we need to look into that every year, every other year? We don't do that now, do we?
We've only done one dredge project since 1960.
Okay.
And it took 10 years to get it permitted. It's definitely terribly slow, but I know Senator Reed's office could be a huge help in this. I know that we should take more sand out of the Winnapaug Pond and maybe part of it could come out of there. But as far as doing something that's quicker, is to have that offshore dredge. I'd like to get some of the sediment out of the pond too. We were able to get a very little amount, but it can come from both ends. I don't care where it comes from. It's just got to start.
Well, you have to be careful with the pond with the farms in there. So
yeah, but they still all say that they should be dredged more.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think we did dredge Winnapaug Pond. Yeah, it cost us $4 million. Did it a couple of times. I think one time it was 52,000 tons. One time it was 75,000 tons. We put it on the state beach. I think it washed away in a week. I'll say this, Caswell, you're probably Misquamicut's favorite adopted son. I was born into Misquamicut, And I'm gonna tell you my feelings on this. I think you save the beach. It's a barrier beach. You save the beach by retreating eventually. I can't agree with some of the numbers here. When I hear $10 million, that's the whole village of Misquamicut. I think you're talking Atlantic Avenue to me is from, I guess it's Scola's house all the way on one end to what I always call Vinnie Gentile's Market on the other end. And that's about 3.5 million. And by the time it disappears, that might be a rounding error. And you tell us that we're going to be Hopkinton without Misquamicut Beach. We'll never be Hopkinton because we have Watch Hill taxes. And Watch Hill has high property values and they pay a lot of taxes and they don't send kids to school. So we're never ever going to be Hopkinton whether we have structures up on Atlantic Avenue or not. And how many times, and this is the part that really scares me as someone who loves the beach, how many times is the state and the Army Corps of Engineers going to watch all the sand wash away, millions and millions of dollars wash away before they say, you know what, maybe we do need a breakwater or to sink a ship or to do something that changes our waves. And then we got Ocean Beach. And then I might as well stay home and stand in the swimming pool with my nephew's pee from a few days ago. The reason I love Misquamicut Beach is because it is such an open beach, and if we have to end up retreating, then that's what we have to do. But all this is, I don't think economically it works, and I don't think that you change the nature of a barrier beach either. So I'm sorry, for me, it's going to be a no.
Well, again, I'm not I mean, you can certainly have a glass half empty approach, but I want you to, bear in mind that if 218 houses on Elm Street were in jeopardy, you'd jump to action tomorrow. I'm not wrong. If it was in any other part of town, you would all jump to action immediately. But it's because it's people that own second homes and we don't want to help millionaires. And that's what I hear. I'm not saying you guys as a council, but it's like, screw them. Who cares? And I get it. They have a house on the beach, it's worth $2 million. They're not going to go in the poorhouse if their house goes in the ocean. I get it. But we're going to lose all their money. That's the problem, I mean, do we care if Taylor Swift lives here? Probably not, but she pays a good amount of taxes. And so, I don't understand. I've never quite understood the sort of animosity towards summer or part-time residents who come here, spend more taxes than the rest of us who live in the rest of Westerly, don't put kids in the school, don't require any services, and then we ask for $300,000 a year to be set aside so that they can keep paying their taxes, and it's like, no, I want you to fall into the ocean. So I have to just disagree with you on that, and I mean respectfully, and we can disagree, and that's fine. I'm just saying that eventually, and if you look at Superstorm Sandy, it's the whole Misquamicut Fire District that was affected. It went all the way up to the Breezeway Resort.
Kevin's got a question.
Sure.
I'll say thank you for the presentation. We have, sea level rise, affordable housing, I think those are like two of the top 3 or 4 problems that we have, or I will say challenges that we have right now in this town.
Oh, I think problem's the word for it.
And, this is the first real substantive discussion that we've had in our term about it. So thank you for bringing it to us. I think I will agree with one thing that Councilor LaPetra said, that it is inevitable that we are going to have to retreat from the beach. The process that we have to go through is to figure out where the diminishing returns lie in the strategy of mitigation. And you lay out a really compelling economic case for beach restoration. And so I think, we're going to have to understand, I would definitely be for pursuing the Corps of Engineers and understanding if it's feasible, if they will pay for their 2/3, if the state of Rhode Island would pay for Misquamicut, if we determine all of these things and then we look at our, what we potentially lose in tax revenues and we make it balance out, we have to do that cost benefit analysis. And then the next time around we do that cost benefit analysis, is going to be very different because the seas are going to be, 3 feet higher. And, we know that what we get the first time, if we go down that route, is not what we get the second time. So I'm definitely in favor of starting this process. I do have a couple questions about, because I remember after one of the storms, Sue, in one of your videos, you had talked about beach scraping, and I just want to hear why you kind of moved off of that and onto restoration, and as well how dune restoration could also factor into some of this
Sure. I'll start with the dune restoration because that's the easiest one. Wherever there's a great dune, like at the state beach, and you can sacrifice the first third of the dune to the weather, it works. And it works at the town beaches. And the problem we have is that because we have waited so long to take any kind of action, you can't build the dune in front of the Pleasant View. It's water. You can't build a dune in front of some of these houses. So yeah, if we could put another 150, 200 feet of beach up that strip, it would be, and we should make it mandatory that it would be dunes all the way along that entire thing. I mean, it might affect somebody's view, but so what? Yes, dunes are totally important. Beach scraping, I don't want to go down the road because so many people are opposed to it and because CRMC is opposed to it. And I don't, at this point, beach scraping is not going to save the beach. What beach scraping used to do, as far as from my point of view, or what the people used to do in Misquamicut, is they would push the sand up to in the wintertime to stop the, to protect the structures. And then in the springtime, they'd push it back down. Well, Mother Nature scraped the beach for us 3 times this winter. Mother Nature scraped the sand, but just threw it in the street. And then we put the sand back on the beach. So it's not a ditch I want to die in. And if we put 150 or 200 feet of sand on the beach, there's no need to even talk about beach scraping. I was trying to find a way that is the most environmentally friendly way to do this. And the 400 projects that have been done have proven. Now, do some of them go awry? I'm sure. Are there cases where they do like a little tiny stretch of beach, $500,000 worth, and then it's the next storm takes it away? Yeah, and that's why I'm saying to you, if it's not done in a whole approach, a holistic approach, from one end to the other, it's not going to work. It can't just be done piecemeal. You can't say, well, I can't do that because that's in front of a house, or I can't do that because that's in front of a business. You got to just bite the bullet and say, we're doing the whole thing. But as far as the public's concerned, now there's access, because the minute you put tax dollars towards sand, it ain't private no more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caswell. This is heartbreaking because we really are here now. It's here much, much faster than we all thought it would come. It's here. And we're looking at Atlantic Avenue disappearing. I get it. I agree with Councilor LaPetra. How long can we stave off Mother Nature? She's going to win. She will ultimately win. But I don't think anybody in this town is ready to go down without a fight. Not yet. Not me. We can, if we went with this, right? We went with beach nourishment, we're going to get 10 years. I think that in tandem, studying whether we're going to go that route or not, we need to have in tandem with public participation. Your slide showed CRMC, state legislators, residents, this, that, the other, the residents, the fire districts have to know this is going to be public. We also have to think 20 years ahead. When do we prohibit rebuilding? When do we retreat? When do we start retreat? I don't think it's feasible every 10 years to try to maintain, as sad as it is, our beaches. And that goes to, you talk about property tax, you talk about business revenue, you talk about livelihoods. The town needs to turn its focus away from tourism a little bit. We are too heavily dependent on that. And I just think that we have to do all of this at once, or in 8 or 9 years, we're going to be, oh my gosh, all these residents, all these businesses, and we'll have done nothing to prepare the town for what will be the eventual loss. So, I'd be willing to make a referral tonight to get this going in conjunction with planning, zoning, EDC, CRMC, everybody, to come up with a plan, a long range and a short-term plan. You know, maybe we'll have 150 feet next July. It would be wonderful. And thank you for, we all feel the same. You know, this is our town. That's our beach. It hurts. And is it worth it to me financially for the town to spend the money? Yeah. It's what we are, but not forever, you know? So please, you know, work with us, work with the residents and the businesses, and, you know, they need to know that there's eventually going to have to be some sacrifice, a lot, to be able to keep up what we have.
And that's why I, just to respond to that, that's why I came to you first, because, I know how the town runs. If you guys say, no, don't pursue this, well, what am I going to do? Or what are we going to do? So it's got to sort of start from the council. It's not this, I want to throw this out there, and I'm going to go to the fire district board, and I'll chop this around a little bit, but I'm just kind of at this point volunteering to do this. But obviously I have a stake. I don't want Misquamicut gone, but yeah, it's got to come from you guys, and you can research the barrier reefs and all that stuff too at the same time. It doesn't just have to be Caswell's idea. I'm giving this to you. You do with it as you tell me to do with it. Or you do it and tell me to go sit down and you take it, which would be fine too.
Caswell, your enthusiasm is in fact just, if Dylan's a half full guy, I'm almost empty, but it might be because of my background. But anyway, I came from Sarasota a few years ago, and they do it quite often. But they don't do the whole beach. They do Siesta Key and Longboat Key, but they just do sections. But they do it. But they have it's almost $1 billion a year in business they get there. That's the thing. And in Montauk Point, yes, they did, and we'll see how successful they are. I think they are so far, but they got a ton of money too. That money is an issue. The other problem, well, and Taylor Swift, she's going to be the last person. She's going to be the last person fighting Mother Nature, because she's the highest in town. So she will be the last defense against Mother Nature. But, some of this stuff about the housing on the beach that bothers me as well is you go down there now and people are building houses right on the beach. And so that's kind of offensive. When, I don't know, it was 2 years ago, NOAA finished their mapping of Rhode Island. I don't know if you
got to get some new chairs if budgets are tight.
So NOAA did their mapping of Rhode Island, and they had a Zoom meeting, and I attended that Zoom meeting. And I'm not sure, I'm trying to find it online, because you can go online and look at the map. I was astounded because I think they said in 2040 or 2050, the latest, high tide will be at Atlantic Avenue. That was their model 2 years ago, and most people are saying that NOAA's models are already out of date because it's going that rapidly. So that's why I'm pessimistic, because even if you take NOAA's best numbers, that the high tide will be at Atlantic Avenue in 2050 or something like that. It's probably going to be quicker. It's just going to be quick. I wish you the best. You don't have to listen to this council. It'll be gone in 5 or 6 months, and you can get on the council and do whatever you want. But that's the other problem I have, and it is a barrier beach. And the beauty of Nappertree Point is that it has no houses. It moves like a tail, and so the beach always remains, but nothing can be on the beach. But so that's why I'm pessimistic. And the money, even
not even people sometimes.
What's that?
The Nappertree Point.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
Well, I missed the joke, but anyway. So that's why I'm pessimistic. And the other thing is about the numbers. One is, yes, those are numbers today. They're not going to be numbers in 5 years when the town, or 10 years, whenever it gets around to this. And then the money is drying up, as you know, because the difference in attitude from CRMC, from Superstorm Sandy to this winter is night and day. And I think I've talked to you about that. They just, before it used to be just go ahead, fix it. We'll give you the permits later. Now they're saying, don't fix it. And maybe we'll give you a permit. And I think
that's telling. It's not just CRMC. You can say, well, I don't agree with them, but they're getting their orders above them. I mean, so listen, I don't want to talk you out of it. You go for it. If anybody could do it, you can. It just, there's a lot of problems and a lot of, and I don't know if you could shorten it so it's only part of the beach. I know you say the whole beach needs to be replenished. Is there no way you can do just part of the beach? I mean, it has to be all or nothing.
I think it fails if you just try to do segments. It'll happen what happened with the State Beach. It'll be cool for a year or two, and then it's just going to wash. You've got to do a longer stretch so that it doesn't erode. You can't have, if the profile, if the sand goes out 80 feet from the dune, and then all of a sudden it juts out to 150, and then goes back to 80, that spit that's out there, that's going to get washed out.
Well, that's where Mr. Overton's jetties and things come in. But anyway,
yeah,
I got your point. That's all I got to say. I wish you the best. I really do.
Yeah, I hope everybody does have an opportunity. I just want to say one thing. Let's not get carried away and call this project or this idea, save the beach. The beach will always survive. The beach will endure. The beach will flourish. This project, we could call it save the structures of Atlantic Avenue. We could call it save the Windjammer, but it's not save the beach. The beach will always be here, and the citizens of Wesley will always be able to get to the beach. It's a barrier beach, and it's not going anywhere. If we have a tactical retreat, it might even be better than it is today.
Just for point of, I never called this Save the Beach. I called it a beach nourishment proposal. It's not me against you. It's not us against them. It's a proposal. You can accept it. You can tweak it. You can run with it, or you can tell me to go screw. And I'll accept anything.
Council can dish it, but he can also take it, right? A couple of comments that, yeah, Mary and I also attended that meeting last week with Senator Gu and all these agencies. And it was interesting, and CRMC didn't really oppose it, but they did come down to the dollar figure, especially when you take into account the rest of the coastline in the Rhode Island. So there's a lot of competition. All in all, I mean, the price tag, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the Corps would even be entertain the discussion. As you know, when Winnapaug was dredged, there were a lot of restrictions on where you could dredge. You can't touch this area. You can take it from here, not from here. So there's all that with the Winnapaug. So I have a question. Maybe you can just think it over, and maybe you've already addressed it. But with the sea level rise, have you also looked at the Reachway and Winnapaug Pond, how much that's going to rise? Because that's all ocean water that comes in there, right? So trying to balance those two things out.
Yeah.
And you know, there's one section of Atlantic Avenue that floods very frequently.
Yeah, I'm not offering a 50-year solution. I'm not offering a 30-year solution. I'm offering a solution that could be a decade, and then it could be reassessed, hopefully by somebody besides me, a decade down the road. And part of it is building up the profile of the beach so that it is higher than the current sea level. And that's part of it, what some of those other projects have done, so that in the shorter term, meaning in the next decade, every rainstorm doesn't turn into a flooding disaster, and you're spending $100,000 a year to clean it up.
Yeah, and I guess my point was that yes, if you you could raise the domes up 100 feet, but if we don't take care of that back channel, are people going to be able to access the beach anyway? So there's a lot involved with that. So
there is.
It'd be interesting to see how far the Corps would be willing to go. I guess the feds could just print more money, but then our grands and grands and grands will be paying for it forever. But
yeah, well, I would say that just in my final comment would be, it would take you guys sending this to Army Corps to see if they would do it. And that's probably what I'm asking for tonight, is for you to at least have that discussion and say, because if they come in and say, absolutely not. And of course, the first thing they're going to, just want to let you all know, the first thing that CRMC, DEM, Army Corps, FEMA, REMA, any of those agencies are going to say is, no, it can't be done. And I don't usually accept that as an answer because it can be done and because it's been done in 400 other places. And there's nothing different about Misquamicut from Montauk or from any of these other places in terms of the profile of the beach, things like that. So, once you get past their initial squawking and say, no, seriously, we want you to re-examine this and to look at this. And I'd say that would be a great place where the council could,
I think, yeah, and I agree that with time, money, technology, and the skill, anything can be done. I think at this point with the presentation, I think we've got the information. And I think if the council under general referral wants to bring this back for further discussion and a potential recommendation or seeking something from the Army Corps, then we could do it at that time. But I think probably a general referral would probably be a good place for the council to bring this back. If they
Here
want
to
to hear
help,
it.
just
Thank
let me know. You know my number.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Are you familiar with section 14 of I think it's the Army Corps of Engineers, 1946 Flood Control Act, where the Army Corps of Engineer will spend money to protect places. You haven't checked with them at all.
no,
All right, that's it.
that'd be above my pay grade. That'd be something I need
Well,
you guys to
that's section 14 of the 1946 Flood Control Act, just